Hello, I'm Thomas at Art and Lit Matters. This is the fourth and final week of a group reading event called T.S. Eliot in August. Great job, everyone, exploring the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock and 1922's The Wasteland. Welcome to the very different world of T.S. Eliot's meditative and mystical four quartets. Burnt Norton, 1936, East Coker, 1940, Dry Salvages, or as Eliot would say, Salvages, 1941, and Little Gidding, published in 1942. Each of the individual quartets are named for specific places of emotional and symbolic significance to T.S. Eliot. Burnt Norton is a house in Gloucestershire, the Eliot's ancestral region, and it is a home that burned in the 17th century. East Coker is a country village from which the 17th century Andrew Eliot, an ancestor of Eliot's, emigrated to the Massachusetts Bay Colony. And Dry Salvages are three rocks that serve as nautical markers for sailors off Cape Ann in Massachusetts, where the Eliot family spent its summers. And Little Gidding refers to a chapel on the site where Nicholas Ferrer founded a religious community in the 17th century. We saw in The Wasteland how time past was continually spilling into time present, whether it's in the sense of one's own personal memories spilling into or informing our present experience, or one's generational past, or the cultural memory, the tale of the tribe that comes down to us when Dante writes in his Inferno, "So many I had not thought death had undone so many," and Eliot translates the scene into modern day London. "So many I had not thought death had undone so many. Sighs short and infrequent were exhaled, and each man fixed his eyes before his feet, flowed up the hill and down King William Street to where St. Mary Woolnoth kept the hours." We are suddenly in a world where the world of Dante and the world of contemporary London is fused together. Four Quartets, among other things, is one of the most sustained meditations on the mysteries and realities of time, and how time and human consciousness are always in a kind of mystical tussle with each other. And when Eliot says, not the intense moment isolated with no before or after, but a lifetime burning in every moment, and not the lifetime of one man or woman only, but of generations and of old stones that cannot be deciphered. He's moving towards a more inclusive and reclaiming sense of time, which incorporates all that has happened in the past as it distills down into this miraculous and elusive thing called a moment. And in fact, Burnt Norton from 1936, the first of the four quartets, opens with a fairly mystical meditation on time. Time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future, and time future contained in time past. If all time is eternally present, all time is unredeemable. What might have been is an abstraction, remaining a perpetual possibility, only in a world of speculation. What might have been and what has been point to one end, which is always present. Footfalls echo in the memory down the passage which we did not take, toward the door we never opened, into the rose garden. And the lotus rose, quietly, quietly. The surface glittered out of heart of light, and they were behind us, reflected in the pool. Then a cloud passed, and the pool was empty. "Go," said the bird, for the leaves were full of children, hidden excitedly, containing laughter. "Go, go, go," said the bird. Humankind cannot bear very much reality. Time past and time future, what might have been and what has been, point to one end, which is always present. One of the ways our group looked at T.S. Eliot's 1922, The Wasteland, was as a war-haunted, deeply personal attempt on Eliot's part to confront the psychological upheaval and trauma and mayhem of that war. And here we are in Burnt Norton in 1936, and of course, the violence beating in the blood from the First World War has not yet been exorcised, but it's also heightened because in 1936 there are already intimations of yet another war, that the original war to end all war wasn't successful in that at all, and that death energies or the thanatic forces that somehow are existing within us are going to surge again and propel us to yet another round of the First Great War. And so one of the great realities of World War I was mud, and another one was barbed wire. And so in the second stanza of Burnt Norton, we find garlic and sapphires in the mud clot the bedded axle tree. The trilling wire in the blood sings below inveterate scars, appeasing long forgotten wars. And then it becomes so cosmic and universal and almost Wordsworthian, the sense sublime of something far more deeply interfused. The dance along the artery, the circulation of the lymph is figured in the drift of stars. Rather than be stuck in the world of trauma, the four quartets offer us so many paths out to a kind of psychological homecoming and succor and mystical transcendence at the still point of the turning world, neither flesh nor fleshness, neither from nor toward. At the still point, there the dance is, and there is only the dance. Eliot spoke several times to the fact that all during the composition of the four quartets, he was listening to the mystical strains of Beethoven's late string quartets, and that especially the string quartet in A minor had seized not just his imagination, but his very soul. And he had written his friend and fellow poet Stephen Spender some time before that the transformation in that quartet from suffering into a kind of joyous release had inspired him profoundly. And we find that continual movement from suffering to some kind of release in the poem itself. But we also find a musical structure in the poem where a motif from earlier on the poem kept being returned to again and again, and the beginning with its time past and time present, and the remarkable image of the still point of the turning world become converged in the fourth movement of the poem, where it's time and the bell have buried the day, the black cloud carries the sun away. I just love the music of that. Time and the bell have buried the day, the black cloud carries the sun away. Will the sun turn to us? Will the clematis stray down, bend to us? Tendril and spray, clutch and cling, chill fingers of you be curled down on us. After the kingfisher's wing has answered light to light and is silent, the light is still at the still point of the turning world. Just as Eliot in the Four Quartets is both haunted and comforted by the miracle of incarnation of the Word actually made flesh, the drama of the poet of trying to use words to achieve a raid on the inarticulate, to express the ineffable, to somehow push language beyond the things that it should ordinarily be able to say, is a continual concern for Eliot. All of the four quartets return in some way to the gap between language and being and the desire to heal that gap. And even here in the first of the quartets, we find words strain, crack, and sometimes break under the burden, under the tension, slip, slide, and perish, decay with imprecision, will not stay in place, will not stay still. In a sense, the poet's task to at least approach some healing of the terrible gulf between language and being is of constant concern to Eliot, and in a sense is tied to the whole miracle of incarnation. And in the second of the four quartets, East Coker, he has what to me is the most interesting meditation on the task of the poet, or task of the creator, to try and give embodiment to some fundamental truth of being. So here I am in the middle way, having had 20 years largely wasted the years of l'entre de guerre, of between two wars, trying to use words. And every attempt is a wholly new start and a different kind of failure, because one has only learned to get the better of words for the thing one no longer has to say, or the way in which one is no longer disposed to say it. And so each venture is a new beginning, a raid on the inarticulate. I so like that phrase, a raid on the inarticulate. It even preserves something of the echo of warfare, because what do soldiers do but conduct raids? And it gives it such a vital and vibrant and energized sense. What does a poet do? He or she conducts raids on the inarticulate, on the unsayable, on those truths of being which resist articulation. A raid on the inarticulate with shabby equipment, always deteriorating in the general mess of imprecision of feeling, undisciplined squads of emotion. And there we have the war thing too, undisciplined squads of emotion, squads, raids. And what there is to conquer by strength and submission has already been discovered once or twice or several times by men and women whom one cannot hope to emulate. But there is no competition. There's only the fight to recover what has been lost and found and lost again and again, and now under conditions that seem unpropitious. But perhaps neither gain nor loss for us. There's only the trying. The rest is not our business. And I find that such a satisfying conclusion to this, because what any writer, what any artist knows is that every attempt is a bit of a failure. It's like Samuel Beckett's fail again, fail better. We do the best we can, but we never get out of that maelstrom of failure, because we're trying to push into new worlds. And Eliot, in saying for us, there's only the trying, the rest is not our business, is just such a satisfying conclusion to a passage about the impossible struggle for healing the gulf between language and being. I so love the very end of East Coker. Home is where one starts from. As we grow older, the world becomes stranger, the pattern more complicated of dead and living. Not the intense moment isolated with no before or after, but a lifetime burning in every moment, and not the lifetime of one man only, but of old stones that cannot be deciphered. There's a time for the evening under starlight, a time for the evening under lamplight, the evening with the photograph album. Love is most nearly itself when here and now cease to matter. Old men ought to be explorers. Here or there does not matter. We must be still and still moving into another intensity for a further union, a deeper communion. Through the dark cold and the empty desolation, the wave cry, the wind cry, the vast waters of the petrel and the porpoise. In my end is my beginning. All right, I'm going to stop there. This is just meant as a casual introduction to the wonders of this poem. I will be releasing more videos on the wonderful world of T.S. Eliot's The Four Quartets.